Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1419A, and today's date is November 7th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, First the Petro-Yuan, now the Petro-Ruble, De-Dollarization in full force. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been following the job market for quite a while, and JOLTS came out with their latest data information. And what they're saying is that there's a huge number of job openings that remain at all-time highs, and hiring is now sliding to its lowest in 6 months. Now, we need to understand one thing, first of all, is that we have stores closing down. We had 2 hurricanes, and they're telling us there's tons of jobs out there. Restaurant traffic is slowing up, and jobs, they're just not happening. And they're trying to convince us that all these corporations, they're hiring like crazy. They just can't find the people. We saw this happen once before. Go back to 2007, 2006, 2007. And when we see this happen, where the 12-month job change and the hires start to decline, we enter a recession. And this is what we are seeing right now. It's the same thing that happened in the past. We're seeing it happen once again. Now, we need to understand that there's a lot of people that are looking for jobs. Think about this. The U.S. economy depends on retail. We lost manufacturing. GDP, 70% of it, is made up of people spending money in retail. Now, we know online sales is only 10% of retail. And if we go back to 2008, we saw that there was a record 6,163 retail stores that were closed down at that time because we were going through a major recession, which we really never recovered from. But what they did was they convinced us that we recovered. They're very good at this. The central banking system, they know how to play with the numbers. They know how to play with the economy to make it look like everything is fantastic. Think about it. Go back to 1929. No one knew that the economy was a complete and utter disaster. Fast forward to 2007, 2008, people thought everything was great until it wasn't. So far in 2017, there's between 7,000 and 8,000 stores that have been shut down, and we still have 2 more months to go. So right now, we can see that 2017 is going to be the year where we've seen the most store closings. Now, we haven't even gotten into this holiday season, and once this holiday season is a disaster, of course the corporate media and everyone's going to make it seem like it's really good. It's going to be even worse. Now think about this once again. We have 300 retailers that have declared bankruptcy so far in 2017, and we're on pace to lose over 147 million square feet of retail space by the end of the year. But what they're trying to tell us is that we just can't find people to work, and we have all these jobs that are just open and ready for people to come in. Now let's look at corporations. Their revenue, their sales have been declining. Forget about their earnings. That's manipulated. Revenue and sales have been declining. Do you really think they're hiring? We also talked about how corporations out in California are buying office buildings, but there's nobody in them. Actually, they have no plans to fill the office buildings with anyone. They're completely empty. They thought the economy was going to boom. The economy is not booming. The whole thing is falling apart. But they don't want anyone to know about this. So this whole JOLTS number of there's so many job openings out there. Yes, there could be job openings because what corporations do, and if you ever worked in a corporation, they have these job recs where they keep them open in each department and they interview people and they keep them open. They don't want to close them because if they close them and they say they don't need them, they lose them. Very hard to get back. Now, the corporation might say, listen, and I've seen this before prior to 2008, we're on a hiring freeze, but you can still interview people, but we're just not hiring people, and we're going to say these positions are open. This is what we're seeing right now. And the same thing happened leading up to the recession of 2008. We also see U.S. consumers right now, they are in a huge amount of debt. U.S. credit card debt has risen above $1 trillion. With student loans, auto loans, they're hitting all-time highs. Now, this is a complete disaster because we're at that point where we were back in 2007 going into 2008. And we know right after that, everything fell apart. So this non-revolving credit reached a fresh record of $2.78 trillion. Revolving or credit card debt is now back over $8 trillion, or $1.006 trillion to be precise, and fast approaching the all-time bubble high of $1.02 trillion, which was hit in the summer of 2008. And speaking of student loan and auto loans, the Fed's latest data showed that in the third quarter, these rose to all-time high of $1.112 trillion for auto loans. And we are exactly back where we were during the recession. Now, why are people using credit cards today? Because when people lose their jobs, when people have no money, they need to survive on credit. Even when people have jobs and they're not getting cost of living, they still have to survive on credit. If people have part-time jobs, they need to survive on credit. And I don't mean going out purchasing TVs, washers, dryers, stereos, things like that. Because if that was true, retail would be booming right now. What people are buying, they're buying food. They're trying to get by with rent. They're trying to get by with their car payment. This is what we're seeing right now. And remember, the central bank pushes their entire scheme by pushing out more debt. And this is why we see the savings rate continually dropping. People are using their savings because they have to do what? They have to pay off their credit cards. And they pay off a little bit so they can, spend $200-$300 during that month and maybe pay off $20, $25, $30 of that credit card. And it all depends on the credit card and payments and things like that. But this is what people have been doing. And it's very, very tough. Now we see the yield curve. Now, the yield curve is collapsing, and we've seen this happen before when the Fed raises the Fed fund rate, and they've done it a lot faster in the past, and the yield curve just completely crashes. They're doing it very, very slow right now because they know what's going to happen. If they continually push it up very high, the entire thing is going to fall apart, and this is why people have been mentioning the yield curve, because everyone's starting to realize we have major problems here. Now, as we know, the economy is deteriorating very, very quickly. And this holiday season is not going to be any better. We're going to see the housing market implode. Remember, this summer, the housing market, it was absolutely awful. And during the summer months, housing usually does very, very well. This time around, not so much. Last summer, not so much. And going into this year, 2018, it's going to be even worse because we're on the downside of these gigantic bubbles. The people out there just don't have the funds. This is why builders are coming up with all these different type of plans. When you see builders or the Fed or the government come up with types of plans of trying to help people, which they're really not trying to do, they're trying to get people to take out more loans, you know we're in trouble. When they're telling you, hey, listen, if you buy a house, we'll help you pay off some of your student loans, you know we're in trouble. If they're lowering the credit standards and going to the subprime for auto loans, you know we are in trouble. If they're just trying to get anyone to take a student loan out, you know we are in trouble. And this is what we've been seeing for quite a while. Now, the central bankers, they understood, and they still understand, that the system was coming down. And I'm not talking about the Fed. They knew this. The ECB, they know this. The Biz, they know this. IMF, they know this. And they made plans. The central bankers, they're controlling the world right now because they hold the key to each country because they supply them with currency. They don't care about the laws. They don't care about that. They just care about supplying the currency to the governments because once you put a government into debt, you control them. It's that simple. And what we're seeing right now is they've been making plans, and they've been pushing their plans for quite a while to shift everything. And it's going to be shifted away from the dollar. What we're seeing is a huge de-dollarization right now, and it's unfolding right in front of our eyes. It's been unfolding for quite a while. But central banks, what they do is they do this very slowly, very methodically, so nobody notices. And the corporate media says, this is not really a big deal. You shouldn't really pay attention to this. Look at the stock market. Look at the stock market. And what we've seen and what we discussed in the past is that China, which is part of the central banking system, don't get me wrong here, everything's been set up there because they're getting prepared and ready to go off of the dollar system and move on to a completely different system. And what we're seeing right now is that Russia, China, they've been moving away from the dollar. So has Venezuela, so has Syria, so has Iraq, so has India, so has Iran. And we see that Russia and Iran, they've made a deal. Now, we know Putin arrived in Tehran on November 1st, and they talked about, and he talked to Ayatollah Khamenei, and they talked about a nuclear agreement, they talked about gas, they talked about all different things, and they made deals. And one of the deals was to use the ruble, the Petro-Ruble, to pay for their natural resources. This way, they're completely off the dollar. Venezuela has done the same with the Petro-Yuan. We see India is going to be doing the same exact thing. We see Syria, Iraq, and many other countries. They're all doing the same thing. Iran is also going to join the Shanghai Cooperation, which comprises of China, Russia, and most of Eurasia, plus India, Pakistan, and many other countries are looking to join. They're going to be joining the One Belt, One Road system. Just like we've discussed many, many times before, many other countries are joining this. This whole thing is being created and built right now because the central bankers know, and they don't have any allegiance to any country or group. They don't care. What they care about is, okay, we have this dying system. We don't want to be blamed for it because we want to start this new system someplace else. This is what we're seeing right now. And we've been mapping this for many, many years. And it's been very slow, very methodical. And they've been doing this very, very carefully so people don't realize it. And the deal, like during World War II, before World War II, was made that the U.S. would become the reserve currency after the war. And they're doing it once again. They're making preparations. They moved everything from the west to the east, and they've been doing this, and many people have not picked up on this. And we can see right now that many countries are de-dollarizing right now because they realize that this is the time to do it. You're going to see more countries do it because they understand the dollar is dead, and there's no place to go except maybe towards the yuan, the SDF, cryptocurrency, and we're going to have to see how this plays out because we do have many factors all happening at once, but we know what the central bankers want. They want control of the creation of currency because that's all they have. If you take that away from them, you don't need them. They have no power whatsoever because then they can't put countries into debt. They can't enslave the people. So what we're seeing right now is a slow grind to a collapse. And it's going to accelerate once they're ready to pull the plug. And the dollar is going to go down fast. The system is going to go down fast. But they like to cover this up with some type of an event. And this is what they've been trying to plan. This is why they've been holding off. Because they just don't want to do it because everyone's going to say, well, wait a minute. The Biz, the IMF, the Fed, you're all behind the dollar. The dollar's failing. That was your currency. You controlled it. You handled it. And it failed. And you want us to go onto a new system? When you had a failing system, they don't want this to happen. And this is why they're holding off switching everyone over because they're waiting for something to distract everyone. And this is what we've been waiting for. This is why the collapse hasn't happened as of yet. Because they can't do it without the event. They can, but the people around the world are going to look at this and say, well, wait a minute. And governments are going to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. You're supposed to be managing this. You can't manage this whole thing. Why should we go onto your new system? So the collapse is still coming. Never changed. They've been preparing this for a very long time, and you need to get prepared because it's going to hit, and it's going to hit very quickly. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.